For the past couple months, I've been researching something that has always interested me, but until now, I've never been able to find a complete answer to. That question is, how do mountain bikers prioritize the risks and rewards that come with their sport, and how does this risk affect their riding? My name is Alex Bartoletti, and I'm an 18-year-old freshman at the University of Washington. I've been riding mountain bikes for the past 6 years now. On many occasions, I've crashed or come very close to crashing and seriously injuring myself. These cases have caused me to reflect on my own riding and look at other riders to learn how they deal with the same risks. I ended up interviewing Chris Boutilier, the lead mechanic at my local bike shop, Kaytlin Melvin, a downhill racer and fellow student at the University of Washington, and Ryder Locknane, a cross-country trail rider and fellow student at the University of Washington. I met Chris this summer working at the same bike shop. When I asked to interview him, I knew he would have some great thoughts to share. Chris rides in the freeride mountain biking discipline, where he can be subject to some of the most intense risks in the sport. Here we talked about his past injuries and thought processes surrounding them.
The biggest one that comes to mind was my hip. 3 years ago, it happened in a foam pit of all things. I was working on bar spins into a foam pit, and basically my leg kind of landed underneath the bike and my hip got yanked downwards and outwards. So my hip, my femur, my leg got pulled out of my hip socket and tore the labrum, the lining in between the ball and the socket of the joint, and also made a mess of the bone at the top of my femur. So this was about 3 years ago. They did a full hip reconstruction on me. Had I been 20 years older, they would have given me a replacement, but just because of the way joint replacements work and how you kind of have to redo it every decade or two, and the fact that I was only 25 when it happened, they wouldn't give me a new hip. But yeah, that was one of the bigger ones. I don't know. There's been a lot of just like I said, it's almost death by 1,000 scrapes and bruises.
Yeah.
That was one of the bigger ones I can think of that happened to me. I've seen a lot of gnarlier ones happen to other people. But.
So how did that experience kind of change your outlook on mountain biking thereafter? Did it?
That was an interesting one. I would say it had the complete opposite effect that a lot of people in those situations say. You have a bad crash and people get really cautious after that. For me, since my crash, it was in the foam pit. The foam pit is where you go to practice tricks and get your shit dialed before you take it to the dirt. And for me, what that taught me, and this wasn't just a biking thing, this was kind of a life lesson for me. But the lesson was kind of that you do you got to do what you're going to do, which for me is mountain biking because that's what makes me happy. And bad things can happen at any point, but a lot of times that was the worst injury. That was the worst injury that I've gotten from mountain biking in terms of recovery. I was off the bike for almost a whole year. And it happened in the foam pit. It's not, a lot of times it's not the big scary 20-foot drop or the backflip or whatever it is that you're afraid of, that you really spend a lot of time thinking about and trying to wrap your head around and trying to motivate yourself to do. A lot of times it's not that thing that gets you. It's the stupid little things that can happen to anybody at any time. So what I got from that was almost like, well, if I can get this hurt jumping into a foam pit, then screw it. You can get hurt doing anything, and you can have. So that was one of my biggest injuries that happened again, jumping into a foam pit. I've crashed on some big shit. I've crashed on 20-foot drops. I've crashed on backflips. I've crashed on and I've walked away from all of those, and it's just like one stupid little thing that takes me out. The lesson I took from that is basically just that shit happens, bad things happen to good people all the time. You can't really dwell on that. You can't really make your decisions based on the bad things that could happen. You just have to, you do you. And for me, that means riding my bike and being the best mountain biker I can be. And that means taking certain risks and occasionally doing something that scares you and, hitting that 20-foot drop that you've never hit before. So now I almost always have in the back of my head that, like, you know, it's not the big scary shit that takes you out. Yeah. It's the little stuff that could happen to anyone at any time. Mm-hmm. So I did not come out of that injury with any kind of real fear or hesitation to get back into that stuff. If anything, it was the opposite. I came back from that injury, you know, just thinking, I don't really care what happens to me at that point, because I'm going to do what I'm going to do regardless. You know, if I get hurt doing it, so be it. I'm going to do it anyway.
Yeah.
Because I could get killed walking across the street.
Yeah.
You know.
Definitely could. So, could you tell us a little bit about your eye injury and how that, an injury outside of mountain biking, has affected you inside the sport?
Sure. So what happened with my eye, I shoot a lot too. It's one of my other little sports. And I mean, I still shoot, you know, I go shooting a couple times a week. I shoot a couple 100 rounds of 9mm every week pretty much. But what happened that day, we were shooting at a steel target that somebody else had set up, and it wasn't set up on any kind of chain or anything that swings or pivots or whatever. And I shot this thing with a .308 rifle, which is a big rifle, and I was probably 30 yards away. But for that rifle, it's probably a little close. I mean, people shoot steel targets all the time, but the thing is, it wasn't, like I said, it wasn't hanging or anything. It was just sitting there. So basically what happened is, you know, I pulled the trigger, and the bullet came right back at me, hit me in the forehead, did not go through my skull, bounced around in my head a little bit, and landed in my right eye, instantly severing the optic nerve. I was never going to see out of that eye again. The whole thing nearly killed me. I mean, it was the worst concussion I ever hoped to have. Like I said, the bullet, which was traveling over 2,000 miles an hour out of the barrel, 2,800 feet per second. I'm pretty sure it's over 2,000 miles an hour. Bullet came back and hit me in the head with just more force than you can imagine. So I can't see out of my right eye anymore. They're going to remove my eye in a week or two, and we're going to have a glass eye put in. So that's the backstory. In terms of, you know, that day, that, you know, within minutes, the first thing I'm thinking about is, how is this going to affect me on my bike? You know, riding a bike is pretty much the most important thing I have going on in my life. That's not to say I don't care about family or I don't have anybody close to me or anything like that. It's just that a long time ago, when I was, you know, 16, 17 years old, I decided that my purpose here was to become the best bike rider I can be, because that's what makes me happy, and that's what I'm going to do, goddammit. And so something like that, you know, your first thought is, shit, am I going to be able to ride a bike? You know, it definitely took some adapting to, and, you know, my parents, they don't really understand this stuff. You know, for them, it's just some crazy Evel Knievel thing that I do. And, you know, to them, it was like, well, you had this horrible thing happen to you that nearly kills you. You know, aren't you going to slow down? Like, can you back off on the dangerous stuff now? And in a lot of ways I have. You know, I don't ride the motorcycle so much. I'm in a lot of ways I've backed off a little bit, but not biking. Like, biking is just like what I do. Biking is, you know, what makes me who I am. Like, if I didn't have that desire to ride, like, I wouldn't really, I don't know, it becomes such a part of like who you are and how you think and like just your identity, that there's really, if I'm physically able to ride, I'm gonna ride. Yeah. There's really nothing that would get me to stop, you know?
Yeah. Chris and I also talked about what makes him pull back when risk sometimes does get the best of him. One topic led to the next, and this ended up being our deepest section.
And I'm feeling good that day, you do it. But yeah, I guess maybe at this point I don't have as much to prove. So like that that slows you down a little bit. You get a little bit less of that, like, oh, I need to hit this jump. I need to.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, I don't know. I'm not doing it for anybody else. Like, if I did this to impress other people, I'd be posting all the shit I do on Instagram and Facebook and putting all my rides on Strava, and I don't, because I don't really care. I really do it for me, and at the end of the day, like, if I'm not feeling it that day, I'll hold back. I'll take it easy. And there are days when you're feeling it and you just want to send it.
Yeah.
And so you send it. So yeah, the things that would make me take a step back or slow down a little bit, it's almost just, like, what kind of mood am I in that day, like what how am I riding, like, and I do, like, there's definitely like the day I took the bullet to the head, there was definitely a while. So when it happened, we were out in the middle of nowhere, long ways away from help. I'm bleeding a lot. The bullet was still in my head. And you're laying in the back of the seat of the car, bleeding out, essentially, hours away from help. And yeah, you think about stuff like family, and I would never want my family, the people I care about, to have to go through the loss of me because of something stupid that I did. That's the kind of shit that would make me slow down. Like, I would never. I have no fear of death whatsoever. I don't. I really don't. I don't know. I'm an atheist. I don't believe in an afterlife. I believe kind of what you have in this life is what you get. Make the most of it.
Yeah.
And I'm doing that. And if I died from some random lightning strike or hit by a car or whatever, I have no regrets. I'm perfectly fine with that. There was no fear of death in that moment. The only negative feelings that day were much more, well, shit, now somebody's gonna get that phone call.
Yeah.
Like, that's what I don't want. And that, yeah, it does slow you down a little bit, I guess. But again, like, most of this shit we're talking about, I don't really look at this 20-foot drop that I haven't hit yet or whatever. I don't really look at it as, well, this is going to kill me. I look at it more of, well, if this screws me up, it could hurt me. But I don't, because what I get from biking, if biking kills me, so be it. If I hit that 20-foot drop and I snap my neck, I'm fine with that. Like, I've gained enough from biking that any negative that it puts on me, if I mean, knock on wood, we're going riding tonight, and if tonight's the night something horrible happens and I'm put in a wheelchair or whatever, it was still worth it. Like, I've still become the person that I am because of riding bikes. Like, had I never decided to do any of that shit, I wouldn't, even though in this hypothetical situation now I'm in a wheelchair for the rest of my life, I'm still a fucking badass in the wheelchair that's seen shit and done shit and, like, knows what it's like to look fear in the eyes and fucking do it anyway. Versus without doing that stuff, so I may live the rest of my life, like, without a scratch and perfectly healthy, but I won't understand what it means to have that drive and to put it all on the line. And, like, I don't know, I'm a very strong believer that, like, kind of like the whole yin and yang thing. Like, you can't have greatness without risk. You can't have happiness without pain. The amount of happiness you can experience is truly limited by the amount of pain you've experienced. You can't feel the happiness that I've felt without feeling the pain that I've felt. They feed off each other, and because of that, like, that fear that you have to conquer. There's no better feeling than landing that drop that's terrified you for the last year.
Yeah.
You know, you can't get that anywhere else.
Mm-hmm.
No amount of money can buy that experience.
It's true.
It can't be done, you know? So I guess what I'm saying is from biking, I don't feel that way about a lot of other things. I don't feel that way about motorcycles. If I die tomorrow on a motorcycle, and I had the ability to go back and change things, I would say, you know what, because of what happened, yeah, I would choose to have never gotten into motorcycles.
Yeah.
Because it's not worth that. If I break my neck on a bike tomorrow and you give me a time machine and say, well, you can live life the way you lived it, or you can nip that shit in the bud right now, 10 years ago, and say no biking, no dangerous stuff, I would still do it. I would still ride, and I'd still end up in a wheelchair because I know that the person that turned me into is a person that cannot exist without the hardships and the risk and the things that I went through to get to that point.
Yep. Chris has a lot of unique thoughts and experiences that are not only interesting, but can be beneficial to other riders reflecting on their own riding styles. After I first met Kaytlin and I learned about her racing career, I instantly wanted to learn more. Here we began again discussing injuries and experiences in the sport.
I were afraid I was gonna want to stop after that, because for a lot of people in a lot of sports, if you get seriously hurt, you want to stop, it's not doesn't have the same effect that it used to, I guess. So they were worried about that, but I had surgery on both of them. I had rods and pins and everything, so I had to have two to get them in and get them out, and it was 4 or 5 months, I think, total.
Wow.
Before I could ride again. But when
that
I was
seems pretty short, actually.
for
probably because you were young.
Yeah, and it was also because bone injuries just heal a lot quicker than muscle kind of things.
Yeah.
You can separate a shoulder and take a year to really feel normal again. Which is, I've never had muscle issues, but
That's good.
I came back from it and I was fine. I feel like I had more drive than I did before, which is kind of the opposite for some people sometimes. I think also because I was so young, I was oh, I can get hurt and I'm fine.
Yeah.
That was definitely the biggest thing for me afterwards. Was I'm okay. I can get hurt and keep going, and I can still ride again. So then I just also kept getting hurt. I broke my arm again a year later. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just punched a tree.
Ooh.
And just it just went back. It was in a race, actually. I punched a tree and the finish line was a couple 100 feet, so I just kept going. Just sitting, just crawling along with my wrist just dangling. It was really gross. But then I had that one, and then I also had I overshot a jump at Coast Gravity Park and looped forwards.
Yeah.
And just straight to my face. Oh. And thought I had broken my back or something, because my whole thoracic chest area was just in pain.
Just burning.
Yeah. And I couldn't breathe very well, so everybody was freaking out, and the hospital there didn't have the right things to take care of me, so I had to get airlifted to Vancouver.
That's
which
crazy.
I don't remember a helicopter, so don't ask me. I only bruised my lungs and my liver, so I was fine. A week later, I was back on the bike, but it's a really, not many people can ride in a helicopter and be back on the bike a week and a half later.
Yeah.
I was very lucky, but most of that was not a really big mental thing. I don't know, I just most of the time I came back better than before,
Okay.
mentally, yeah.
Yeah, so that's actually one. Next, Kaytlin and I talked about her risk management and how it differs being a racer compared to a casual rider.
Through racing and stuff, hitting the ground takes a big temporary toll, because you can crash in practice and it'll ruin a race run, even though you didn't go to the hospital. You're not actually injured, but it will affect your entire, not career, but it'll affect that point. So that, I think, as I was getting older, that's why a lot of my injuries were earlier on in my career, because as I got older and got hurt more, I was I'm fine, but it's also I just spent 3 months off the bike.
Yeah.
So is that really what I just wanted the pace to go at? So, and then racing and stuff, I would get crash in practice and everything. And so then I would ruin race weekends, and I was I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
So it stopped being less of I don't want to get hurt, because I could handle getting hurt. but it was more of a like, I don't want to mess up like my riding progression, I guess. Like I was fine with like the pain and like getting hurt. I just didn't want that separation from like the progression I was getting to, I guess.
You wanted to be able to continue biking.
Yeah, I wanted to be able to like keep going, even though like getting hurt is temporary. It's like I just didn't want that road bump, like that speed bump. So.
Finally, we talked about how Kaytlin prioritizes the risks and rewards of her own personal riding.
I've never like, in just like my general like day-to-day riding, I guess it's just like whatever like that, like my purpose that for that ride was. If I just like wanted to like go out and just like ride because I wanted to ride, like I never really tried to push myself a lot because I was out there just to have fun in the woods on my bike. And then sometimes if I went out for like training purposes, I would go and I'd be like, okay, I'm gonna take a calculated risk because I am training, I can't get hurt, but I need to be pushing myself in some way. Which was a big thing during the off season, was that you wanted to keep progressing but not get hurt because you were still preparing for something. Mm-hmm. So definitely off season was just really thinking about just like, this is a risk, but it's not a big enough risk that it's going to be detrimental in the future kind of situation. And then racing, it was kind of a little bit higher than that, but not like all out, because you're like, okay, I have a season to think about. I've like made commitments to sponsors and everything, so I need to like push myself because this is like the big thing. Yeah. But I need to be able to push myself consistently for a whole season. Okay. So yeah, kind of just like maintaining consistency was like my biggest.
Consistency is big.
Yeah, at least like in my mountain biking career, because it was racing. I think like a more like recreational rider would have like a different outlook on that, but from a racing standpoint, it was all about consistency and maintaining like the same level of like progression.
Kind of risk taking. The perspective Kaytlin brings is not one necessarily everyone can relate to, but it's one everyone can understand. Ryder and I met in late September and became quick friends. The first time we rode together, I actually witnessed him break his wrist. Here are his thoughts on the event.
We were out at Dookie Hill. It was probably truly like 15 minutes into our ride. We came into the middle area where there's a bunch of practice ramps and little pump courses, and I've saved myself from injuring myself on a mountain bike for 19 years, however long I've been riding, and on this great day, I was following Alex down this ramp. I even went down the baby ramp, little ramp drop, and I ride clipped in, didn't have enough speed and was way too high. Went right over the handlebars, planted down on my left wrist, and then landed on my shoulder and other wrist. And I had a nice little, I wouldn't say little, but nice fracture there. So I had to have surgery and have a nice titanium plate put in. So now I got this great scar to remind me of that, but yeah.
And how recent was that?
What was it? That was Friday before the 23rd, so the 21st of September this year, 2018. Yeah.
So after you got injured and all that, how did it at all change your outlook on like participating in mountain biking and what you wanted to do with that?
I think it's just something you have to come to grips with. It's just a part of riding. That's part of the reason that you choose to ride is the risk and the thrill of it. And unfortunately on that day, mountain biking got the best of me, but it's definitely not something that will prevent me from going back out there. That's just part of the reason you ride, to enjoy the thrill.
Next, Ryder and I talked about what drives him to pull back and avoid risks in mountain biking.
I think just kind of knowing my limits. I think that in this past instant, I wouldn't say it was peer pressure, but the competitive nature of seeing my two buddies fly off the ramp and land it easy, I think that got the best of me. And I knew that I was going in hesitant, which is never a good sign. And I just kind of know myself and my own balance, and I've just typically avoided any like big drops or or jumps. So I don't know. I guess it's just. Can you remind me what the question was? Like,
So what makes you pull back a little bit?
yeah. I don't, there's just visually you can kind of tell when drops become too big, when there's obstacles that you might have to dismount. And honestly, the style of riding I do is to live for another ride. So in most cases, if there's something I'll take on challenges so far as they aren't maybe, threatening to my health in a major way. But my mentality is to live for another ride because I want to be able to get back on the trail the next time.
Finally, Ryder told me a little bit about how he prioritizes risks and rewards in his biking style.
There's something so freeing and thrilling about mountain biking. Like, especially this past spring, Dad, brother, and I were down in Scottsdale, Arizona, riding some single track out there, and you're in the middle of the desert, riding in this beautiful landscape, and it's all about where the ride takes you next, and you have absolute control of that. There's just something so unique about being able to be out there to test your agility, your balance, your muscular and aerobic strength. There's just something so enjoyable about being out there, and if you do ride within your means, I think you can balance that risk versus reward pretty dang well. So I just have to say, it's just about the enjoyment of the ride and how that just kind of trumps the risk that comes with it.
Okay. Ryder's less intense riding style can hold less danger in some cases, but in other cases, as Ryder talks about, things still can go wrong and you can get injured in the blink of an eye. Ryder brings yet another important perspective to the table. Hearing each of these mountain bike stories has helped me reflect on my own riding. I think it's important to take away that every rider is different, and we all have different motivations, but that being said, I think there is something that can be learned from other riders' experiences and can change the way we each think about our own personal mountain biking. Thank you for listening.